Hello, 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 folks. Welcome back, Chicano Studies 101. So, for learning unit number 5, we've got two chapters the 20s, which is chapter 9, and the 30s, which is chapter 10. There is a really important piece of history in chapter 8. I didn't want to assign all the chapter 8 chapter to you. But I did want to highlight Carmelita Torres in 1917, so that's why one of your discussion boards focuses around Carmelita Torres and the gas baths. So I just wanted to make a shout out to Carmelita Torres, this 17-year-old in 1917 who basically said, "Not today, Satan," about receiving gas bath in order to come into the United States. So she got other women to denounce this practice, which resulted in 2 days of rioting in the border. All right, let's begin with chapter 9. I wanted to highlight what's going on in the 20s. So in the 20s, with regards to the United States, we're starting to see a rise of nativism. Nativism is a term that means that folks who see themselves as citizens only want citizens. So anybody who they deem a foreigner, or particularly not a citizen or an immigrant, they don't want that. They want to shut the borders down. They only want policies that help fellow citizens, and anybody that's a foreigner, that's an immigrant, fuera, get out. So they, as a nativist, not only are you pushing this anti-immigrant narrative, but you're actually promoting it with your actions. You're actually getting involved in making sure that immigrants or the amount of immigrants coming to the United States starts to decline. And we can see that with the government. The government immigration policies at the time set up quota systems, and the folks that were allowed to come into the U.S. were of European heritage, so they had higher quotas than folks that were non-European. But even then, immigration was decreasing, or the attempt was to decrease it because of this nativist rhetoric. And oftentimes when we see nativism, it's connected, doesn't have to be connected, but it's often connected to xenophobia, which is the fear of strangers. So that's the distinction, is that if you're legitimately scared of people, then that fear of strangers can manifest as a fear of foreigners or immigrants, but stranger can mean different things to different people. So xenophobia and nativism may go together but are not the same. So I just want to make that clear. We also saw this rise of anti-immigrant rhetoric with the way we expected immigrants to assimilate. And it wasn't by choice, it was a forced assimilation, because at the time, if you got caught speaking a language that wasn't English, at least in schools, corporal punishment was still popular and allowed in the 20s. So if you got caught speaking a different language, wearing ethnic clothes, eating ethnic food, you would be punished. So it'd be a ruler on your hands, a ruler across your behind, and so on and so forth. So there was that corporal punishment element. Another practice within the schools to make sure immigrants were faithful, loyal, and became assimilated was the Pledge of Allegiance. And so that was a practice that happened a lot in schools, and folks would recite over and over their fealty to the United States, despite their whatever country of origin they were originally from. So that's a little bit of what's going on in the 20s. We're seeing an anti-immigrant rhetoric. We're seeing forced assimilation or mainstreaming. And because Mexicanos are being constructed as the other, then a lot of these policies, these practices are connected to or placed upon Mexicanos. So they're negatively and disproportionately affected by that. With regards to chapter 10, chapter 10 is intense. It deals with the Great Depression, la crisis. So the stock market crashed in 1929. A lot of folks lost their jobs, homes, etc., etc. So folks went scrambling to find anything because at the time there was very few opportunities. And whenever opportunity starts to shrink, we want to push people out so we can create more opportunities. And that's exactly what happened with folks of Mexican heritage. The largest amount of people that were repatriated to Mexico, Valderrama and Gonzalez refers to it as the decade of betrayal. That happened after La Crisis. So a lot of people were repatriated, deported is the more current term, if you will, to Mexico. And some of the people that got sent back to Mexico were actually U.S. citizens who happened to be of Mexican heritage. But because when they were picked up, they didn't have their papers on them, it didn't matter. They just got sent back. So if you were a Mexican, you fit the bill. Kind of like modern day racial profiling. So that's what happened with La Crisis and the repatriation. And last but not least, in chapter 10, there is a video link that I'd love for you to watch. It's a really good documentary of the 1931 Lemon Grove incident. So it is a case with regards to the segregation of Mexican American students in Lemon Grove, California, which is down in San Diego County. And so they recreate this case, and it's actually a really amazing documentary. So I hope you get an opportunity to watch it. If you don't, let me just briefly tell you what happens with the Lemon Grove incident. So Jerome Green, the principal, wanted to implement a new policy that the board developed, which is to basically create a school out of a barn that only Mexicans or students of Mexican heritage would go. So they would create this separate facility for the Mexican students, and they would begin to put these students into this barn at the beginning of the year in 1931. However, when parents got wind of what was going on, some of the Mexican parents chose not to send their kids to the barn Caballeriza, and they decided to sue. And the outcome of this particular case is that these students were being discriminated upon. And here's where it gets really interesting. So there's a case with Richard Rodriguez in which he was trying to petition for citizenship. And at first, it was being denied because of the suggestion that racially he was indigenous or not non-white, basically. And the judge found that Richard Rodriguez is neither indigenous nor African American, and so if he's neither of those, then technically he's white, which if you're white, it doesn't preclude you from citizenship. So that's how that was handled. So technically, folks of Mexican heritage are considered Caucasian, which is really, really bizarre. If you want to read more about that, Ian Haney Lopez has a really amazing book called White by Law, if you're interested. But point being is that that's kind of similar to what happened with this particular case, is that the judge said, look, you are discriminating, number one, against Mexicanos, but specifically, you're separating white people from white people. And so that's kind of what happened with that particular case. All right, folks, I look forward to speaking to you soon. I hope you have an amazing Halloween, and for those of you who celebrate Dia de los Muertos, either on the 1st or the 2nd, shout out to skulls. I hope you enjoy those festivities. All right, have a wonderful Day of the Dead, Halloween for those of you who celebrate. I will talk to you soon. Bye.